Fantastic. Yeah, I am. My name is Schnabel. I am in the US and I am a UX engineer, which basically means that I live in design systems and front-end prototypes and taking UX designers' visions and turning them into interactive spaces. I've done that for about 2 years now, and I've recently gotten into the Web3 space, and I'm currently in a class for that, building smart contracts, which essentially are just the way that you code in Web3. So I'm learning Solidity, which is the language for that. And along the way, I've just really been very intrigued by Web3 and what it has to offer and its potential. And so I'd love to talk with you about that today, a little bit about like, what's the deal with Web3? What is it, first of all? Why does it matter? And what does UX have to do with it? And I think we'll find it has a lot to do with it. But yes. So what is Web3? I could use a lot of big, scary words to try and describe Web3, like blockchain and decentralization. But ultimately, Web3 comes down to digital ownership. It is the ability to prove that you own something digitally as if you would in the real life, So this can be documents, money, collectibles like NFTs, and it's ultimately has a lot of potential for, imagine having your identification on the blockchain, or having a business card, or things like that that you can give to people digitally. It's also a new way for content creators to monetize because they own their own content. So think about Twitter or Facebook. Right now, if I make a post on one of those, they own my content. They own my post. But in Web3, if you make a post, you own it. You could actually sell it if you wanted to. There are also ways to monetize via tokens, and tokens are essentially coins, I guess, digital coins that you can sell and give to people and use them in gatekeeping mechanisms. So for instance, if Rihanna was in Web3 and she wanted to give 1,000 of her followers these tokens, she could then make sure that these token followers were given special treatment, like they had concerts just for them, or they had exclusive merchandise. And the thing with the tokens is they can actually be bought and sold. So people can sell their Rihanna tokens if they want to make money off of it. And maybe if they hold on to the tokens, they grow in value. So digital ownership is the biggest thing about Web3 that I want you to remember. Another thing is it's led to these new organizational structures called DAOs, which stands for Decentralized Autonomous Organization. That's just a fancy word for saying they're ownerless. They don't have a specific leader. Members are accountable for group success. So essentially, DAOs are groups of people who are trying to complete a mission, and they have decided that they're going to work together to do this. Yes. Some basic vocabulary for Web3 that you might want to know if you want to dive deeper into it is NFT, wallet, and blockchain. So an NFT is a unique identifiable collectible. NFT stands for non-fungible token, but you don't need to remember that. All you need to remember is that it is only one piece of it is ever given. Excuse me. There's only one of it in existence, and you can collect it and take it, or you can sell it. A wallet is a digital place to store these NFTs or cryptocurrency or tokens, those Rihanna tokens we talked about. It's also essentially a secret password that gates your money, protects your money. But if you lose the password, you lose ownership of that money, which is a big problem. I also want to talk about the blockchain. The blockchain is essentially a ledger that tracks transactions. So whenever people say like, oh, Web3, like, is it on the blockchain? All they're talking about is, has it been documented via blockchain technology? And it's just a huge ledger that lists out transactions in a couple of seconds. So why is this important? Today's uses, we know about cryptocurrency, we know about NFTs. A lot of people think, what's the point of Web3? Because all they see are NFTs selling for millions of dollars, and it's just an image that other people can screenshot and use in other contexts. So what's the point? Currently, NFTs really serve as art collectibles, and there's interest and intrigue in owning specific NFTs based on their social value. Cryptocurrency, we have seen the rise and fall and rise again, and just the vacillation of cryptocurrency and its value. People can transact in cryptocurrency, they can buy things with cryptocurrency, and that's a use case. Also, today's uses, Walmart, the US grocery store, actually tracks all of its produce on the blockchain. So one thing that they do is every time they get produce, it is documented on the blockchain, and that's how they know where it's coming from and where it's going. But another reason about like, why is it important is right now, it really isn't important. It has a ton of potential though. So Web3 right now looks like a lot of ingredients. We've got our eggs, we've got our flour, our sugar, and our butter, we've got our blockchain, we've got DAOs, we've got decentralization. And right now we're waiting for someone to invent cake. Ultimately, like, we know that these things are powerful and that they're going to be pervasive, but we're not sure in what context because we haven't applied it in different situations. It's the best example I have heard about this is like geolocation on your smartphone. So for instance, when geolocation on your smartphone came out, people were like, why would I ever need this? Until Uber came out, until Google Maps came out. Now it's essential. Now everyone has geolocation and they're always using it. I can't imagine a world without it. That's how the blockchain is going to be. That's how Web3 we predict it's going to be. So what does the UX look like? It's terrible. It's not good. So as we know, experience is everything. It's how you get users. It's how you get an audience. And right now, the UX of Web3 is being built or not built by back-end developers, which are people who deal in APIs and code and predominantly deal with not human-computer interaction. So a lot of stuff that's being built is unusable. It's horrendous. And it builds no trust because sometimes it fails. And also, there are just a bunch of different UX problems to solve. Now, this is good news for everyone here because there's unlimited potential of UX problems to solve. One problem that I touched on earlier is the wallet problem. So right now, if you lose the keys to your wallet, the password to your wallet, your money is gone. It does not have any way of being accessed anymore by you or by anyone. That's a huge issue. Imagine if you had a bank account that if you lost the password to, everything was gone. You wouldn't use that bank account. That's a huge issue facing Web3 at the moment. There's a phrase called not your keys, not your coins, and that represents that. Also, a lot of ways to interact with Web3 are very clunky. So purchasing a wallet, or not purchasing a wallet, getting a wallet, obtaining a wallet is very confusing for a lot of people. They don't know where to go. There are all these tools that are available, but people don't know how to use them. And ultimately, it's just a really bad experience. So what next? Ultimately, this little talk is aimed at getting you to somehow get involved in Web3. And I've been asked, do people need to code to learn to get involved in Web3? And the answer is absolutely not. Code only if it interests you. There are tons of problems to be solved outside of coding. The only prerequisite of Web3 is that you have to have a normal skill like building websites, designing websites, marketing, PR. All of those skills that are used in technology today can be applied to Web3 if the person has a deep Web3 interest. That's what companies are looking for, and that's what they're paying top dollar for, is your competency in a skill set and your interest in Web3. Do you believe in its mission? So I would encourage you all, if you are interested in Web3 and want to get involved, learn more about Web3. So come to talks like this. Go listen to podcasts. A really good one is called Web3 Academy. And also you can get involved by getting a wallet. You can purchase some cryptocurrency, small amount, and maybe buy an NFT if you want, just to see how it works and experience what it's like being a new user in Web3. And you'll start to notice problems. And when you notice those problems, pay attention to them, because those are problems that need to be fixed. So that's essentially the talk that I have. It's a little short, but I wanted to leave enough time for questions. I know that Web3 is kind of ephemeral, it's scary, it's big, but we can talk about anything that we have discussed here today or anything that you've heard elsewhere. Does anyone have any questions that they would like to ask?
Feel free to like raise your hand or just unmute yourselves if you got a question to ask. I'll get started with a question in the meantime. Like where are you seeing like some of the most opportunities, kind of more there's like these tools for building Web3 apps maybe, or like more on the actual apps, like the front end, so like more back end stuff or more like front end?
Honestly, the opportunities are everywhere. Yeah. There are lots of opportunities on the back end. There are equally as many opportunities on the front end. So designing every piece of code that's written on the blockchain needs something for a user to interact with so that they can interact with that code, because odds are not everyone joining Web3 is going to be a developer, and they shouldn't have to be. So how are we going to get users to interact with things? Those are problems that are front end and are very accessible to UX people.
That's awesome. And what have you seen, like in terms of like your experience in UX in other areas, like Web 2 versus Web 3? Like what are the big differences?
Yeah, so you touched on Web 2.
Yeah.
So for those who don't know, currently we are in Web 2, and next up is Web 3. What is Web 1? Web 1 was in the invention of the internet. It was a mostly read-oriented space where you read things that people posted, but it was really difficult to post, and you would have to send people direct links to get to your posts. So it was very difficult. Web 2 invented the actual like ease of posting and content creation. And that's when content became king, and people started paying for content. And we get this rise in third-party content vendors such as Facebook and Twitter and Instagram and Meta and everyone like that. Web 3 is the reading, the writing. So creating content, but also the owning. So that's the ownership model of being able to own these posts that you create and sell these posts that you create and create tokens that you can sell. And those people can take those tokens and own them and maybe resell them later on. So that's the main differences between Web 1, Web 2, and Web 3.
Mm.
Did that answer your question? Or was
Yeah, and I guess, and then just in terms of like the UX side of it, like what, like, is there anything that's like new suddenly? Because I imagine from Web 1 to Web 2, there was like a different like UX, the role of UX there was like quite different, because suddenly you were like, people were creating their own content, so that maybe you went from like the Web 1 users of the internet were much more technical maybe, and then Web 2, it was that like just anyone could like use it kind of thing. And so like the UX, the user experience was very different, and designing for that was like very different.
So on that, it's almost like with UX in Web 3, we're regressing. We're going backwards to that Web 1 point where there really weren't a lot of UX initiatives.
Okay.
Web 3 is marked by technology, and it's marked by coding and a lot of cryptography. So a lot of like really vicious technologies that are not easy to comprehend. And so the people who specialize in those areas generally are not thinking, how can we make this for the mass public? So I don't know, maybe after Web 3, we're like, and then there came Web 4, which was when people could actually use Web 3. And it will expand on that.
Yeah, because I imagine like the late 90s, where you had like just before the .com bubble burst or whatever, that was just like, the internet kind of exploding, and people were like, oh, I can do anything. And I wonder if that's similar to Web 3 at the moment. There's a lot of hype, but I don't know like on the hype cycle where we're at, because like things tend to like get super hyped and then they like drop, and everyone's like, oh, this doesn't work, and then it kind of comes back up to a plateau of like actually useful things. And I don't know where we are on that kind of hype cycle.
In that arc, we're actually pretty at the beginning of it.
Oh, wow. Okay.
Yeah, so it feels like it's been around for years, and it has been, but people only, like the first $1 million NFT sold was like, I don't know, last year, the year before that. It's very recent, and we're early. So any ability that you have to get in on Web 3 is going to suit you well. You're not too late. It's not that kind of thing. We're looking at mass adoption in 3 to 5 years, 5 to 10 years. I had another thought, but it disappeared. Yeah.
Okay. Has anyone else got any questions?
Andrew, Aaron, anyone?
Kimberly?
Yes, I do have a question. I did ask this in the group before. So it's mainly on the key challenges or considerations for designers, especially in the African context, because I understand like Web3 is kind of a new concept, and it's still people are still experimenting, I guess. That's at least, I think, in most Western countries, but here we're still latching on to Web2 solutions and coming up with Web2 based solutions. So where do we fit in the Web3 space? I don't know. I know it's a loaded question.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's a
like,
good question. And I don't claim to be the authority on that, so take what I say with a grain of salt. So my understanding of that type of, we'll call it latency, of maybe in certain countries where there's the Web 2 boom, and then in other countries then there's the Web 2 boom. The access that people have to Web 2 now gives them more access to Web 3 than people had before. So there might still be that kind of rhythm of here and then here, but I think we're going to see that it's a lot shorter, just because the access level is a lot higher. Oh,
we lost it. Shame.
Yes.
At least we're recording still. So
Yeah.
I mean, do you think you need Web 2 to be able to work in Web 3 kind of thing? Like, can you just, because so an example is like in some countries in Africa, they've like just skipped landlines for telephone systems. Like some areas of the countries like never had a landline system for phones. They just skipped straight to mobile, which meant that they actually like had some of the best mobile systems in the world because they weren't like stuck with
That's awesome.
like trying to pay off the old landline system and like that investment, so they could leapfrog some technologies. And I wonder, can a similar thing happen with Web 3? I don't know.
Absolutely. Like, I very much envision when the Web 3 boom hits other countries that have different problems, it's going to create a lot more solutions and better solutions than we're seeing in just Web 2 or just Western spaces. So, like, for instance, cryptocurrency. A lot of people in America think cryptocurrency is worthless, but in other countries, it's actually being used to purchase things. So there's that different context. So in cryptocurrency, you could say other parts of the world are ahead of Western society, I guess, right now in that space.
Yeah, it'll be really interesting to see kind of like what 10 years from now, like looking back.
Yeah, and the hardware that's associated with Web3, like maybe there will be more hard wallets. Like currently I have this is my wallet. It actually physically exists, but there are also digital wallets. And I'm wondering if these wallets that we bring into spaces that can actually interact with in real life things, if the same thing happens and we skip that part and other countries go straight to something even better. So yeah, I can definitely see that happening.
Yeah, no, it's really interesting. Yeah, like I've played around with DeSo. It's like a decentralized social media kind of thing.
Okay. Yeah.
And there it's like so interesting. Like the idea there was that they have like the central kind of blockchain where all the data lives. And then instead of just having like one company like Twitter, like controls like what you see, like anyone can basically build their own kind of interface on top of that, using that kind of like fire hose of data. And so you could have like very conservative views or very liberal views, but like all plugged into the same sort of data source. It was just like really fascinating because then you have like different user experiences and different user interfaces.
And users
all,
get to pick which is the best.
yeah,
you know?
yeah. So, it's like,
So there could be multiple Twitters, and then people choose this one because it doesn't censor, or people choose this one because it has a better interface and those types of things. They like the algorithm better.
Yeah. Yeah, so it's a very different way of doing things. And I wonder, I guess where does the funding come from is maybe going to be a challenge, like, because you have all these teams working on interfaces, but like, how do they then get funded?
Well, there's a lot of funding going on in venture capitalism right now. So people bringing problems to rich people and saying, hey, please invest in us, and the rich people giving them money and saying, but remember us. But there's also cryptocurrency itself. So people who bought, or organizations that bought cryptocurrency when it was really cheap, and now that it's more expensive, can actually use that to purchase things. Something that's interesting is you'll notice that we're actually in a recession in Web3 space, but it's different than the recession in the Web3 space that we had a few years ago, because now everything has funding. Not everything, but a lot of things have funding. They have the money they need to keep building and growing. There's just not that adoption there that we've seen in the past, we've enjoyed in the past few years.
Karen and Andrew, is there any questions you guys have?
Anything at all?
I don't
no question.
No question.
You can go ahead, Karen.
Oh, I just said I don't really have questions.
Yeah,
That's
that's
okay.
good. So I guess like for people wanting to get, like, to say, I want to get into UX research or UX design, or doing like UX development stuff in the Web3 space, like, what you mentioned a few ways to get started, like learning and stuff. Like, what's a good way to meet people in these, like, how have you met people in these spaces?
So there are a couple of different resources that come to mind. Before you said, how do you meet people? I was thinking, like, how do you get a job in Web3? And that is, there's a place called web3.career.
Okay.
And it has a lot of designer positions on there. So that's a place. But then also a great way to get involved is joining a community. So for instance, I joined a podcast community called Web3 Academy. I listened to the podcast. I thought it was interesting. And then there's a Discord. I don't know if everyone is familiar with Discord here. It's essentially an instant messaging system for groups. And I joined their Discord channel and started learning a lot from them in the community, from different people. And they actually formed a DAO that I'm a part of, that has different sections and guilds for development and marketing and writing and community building. And so I would say, find a resource that you really like. And then once you latch onto it, get involved with the community that also is interested in that resource. Generally, they're going to be saying, like, hey, come join our Discord, or come subscribe to our newsletter. Like, take advantage of those opportunities, because they're invitations into Web3.
Yeah, that's cool. And then, yeah, you just kind of see how you start to meet people through that.
I've met a lot of people through that, and it's very fun. It's interesting. It's like most of the people who I talk to nowadays, or I have not met, they're all from Web3 in the Discord. So
yeah, that's cool. And then with your getting a bit more into like being a UX developer, guess you're building, like when you're building design systems and stuff, I feel like design systems are maybe it's kind of just like they come along with a bit more maturity in a business. Maybe like when stuff is like still young and maybe they don't exist. Have you found have you had opportunities to build design systems in Web3 so far?
I have not yet. However, you touched on something that's interesting. Design systems a lot of times are an afterthought, and they're born out of necessity of, oh, we have to build another one of these things. Why don't we just copy and paste this and put it here? No, let's build a design system that has the interface for this to actually be usable and componentized, and we can pull out different components. But in actuality, it really helps for design systems to build and grow with the company, not actually just jump up and join at the end. So for instance, when you're building your first product, I like to build a component library inside that product. So you're going to use several buttons. Make a button component and use it in all those different places. I'm sure that in Figma, or Sketch, if a UX designer is creating something, they don't remake a rectangle every time that they want to. They don't freehand remake a rectangle every time they copy and paste that. So why not put it in a component library and actually have an easier way to drop it into your design?
And so do you think design systems will be different in Web3 and like the way people use them?
I think that we're going to see different types of components. A lot of design systems have the same components. They have buttons, they have drop downs, they have tables, you know. But I think in Web3, we're going to see patterns for how best to communicate gas fees, how best to communicate how much something is going to cost, and how what blockchain you're on, different things like that. Yeah, Andrew?
Okay, hi everyone. So I just wanted to ask, what sort of skills do we need to equip ourselves as UX designers to prepare ourselves and to equip us better for Web3?
Okay, so the question is, what skills do you need as a UX designer to get into Web3?
Yes.
All the skills that are needed in Web2. So your ability to create interfaces that engage and dazzle the user, like that is so needed in Web3. People are still building out websites for Web3 smart contracts and NFTs and things like that, but there will always be a website for someone to go to interact with that smart contract. So honestly, like if you have Web2 skills in UX design, you can get into Web3, gain an interest in it, gain a knowledge of Web3. The only thing missing basically is that interest and engagement in Web3. So once those come together, you'll be unstoppable.
Does that help, Andrew? I think that's good. I see there's some questions that have popped up from Kim. I think we already touched on number 1 and 2 while she was disconnected, but maybe the third one is an interesting one.
So the question is, as a designer, do I need to have... I'm sorry?
My network dropped for a bit, so I just dialed back in. So I guess I will have to listen to the recording to get the answer of the question I had asked earlier on. I didn't get the greater part of it. Yes.
We lost Andrew for a bit.
Okay, so basically, the long story short is, as a UX designer, you already have all the skills you need for Web3. You just need to develop that interest and that engagement in Web3. And then once those come together, that's when you're going to be able to get a Web3 job doing Web2 things. Kind of similar here. Kimberly's question of, as a designer, do I need to have back-end knowledge of how blockchain works? Yes and no. So it's good to understand that a blockchain is a ledger. Do you need to understand how cryptographically blockchains build on each other to implement more security? No. So it's good to have high-level knowledge of Web3 if you want to work in the Web3 space. What is a blockchain? What are the blockchains that are around? Which ones are associated with each other? But you don't need to know the inner workings of the back end. No. If it interests you, go for it. It interests me. That's what I'm trying to learn. But I would say it's not a necessity as a designer.
Awesome. So are there any other areas of Web3 that are kind of like exciting for you now?
Can you repeat that question? I'm sorry.
Are there any other areas of Web3 that you find really exciting right now?
Yeah. There are some startups recently that I've been interested in. I don't know if I'm allowed to talk about them yet. But basically just new ideas that solve old problems.
Okay.
And those startups insanely interest me. So like an old way of getting a receipt for concert attendance. Now you can get what's called a POAP. You can go to the concert and you can get an NFT sent to your wallet, and it proves that you went to that concert. It's called the Proof of Attendance Protocol, POAP. And that, I think, has so much opportunity for gathering data while keeping it anonymous. So you can see that a wallet has accessed these specific things, but you don't know who owns that wallet. And you can build better things for that user without knowing who they are. I'm really interested in POAPs. We've got another one from Kimberly. It says, aside from the metaverse and cryptocurrency trading platforms, which other big tech companies are jumping onto the Web3 wagon? Well, as I discussed, Walmart is jumping on the Web3 wagon. Nike. We've got Walmart, yeah. So
What are they doing?
They actually have all of their produce transactions on the blockchain. They have a private blockchain that they log all of their produce, where it's coming from, where it's going. And that's how they keep track of E. coli outbreaks. It's wild.
Wow. Wow, it is. Okay.
I wouldn't have thought that. But like Nike has a new shoe that they dropped an NFT for, I think. It's just all of the top 100 companies are starting to think of their Web3 strategy. And if they're not, they're going to get left behind real fast.
Right. So that means as designers, we also need to position ourselves to be ready for that.
So.
Yeah.
If you have a high-level understanding of Web3, and you can go in and you can talk about it a little bit, and you can prove yourself as a designer, I think you're already way ahead of the curve for being able to pick up Web3 jobs.
Right. Okay.
Yeah,
That's pretty interesting.
they're exciting.
That's really great. Yeah, and it's just something, and I guess it's just something in general, like just life advice kind of thing of like, if you find something niche and like new and that's interesting to you, just kind of like deep diving on it. There's so many skills you can kind of learn from there. And when there's like communities that are excited about learning about something new, it's just gonna be a great experience, like a great learning experience. And you're gonna pick up skills that like maybe you don't end up working in Web3, but like you'll get so much out of it that you can then apply wherever you end up in. So
Couldn't agree more.
yeah, that's really good. Well, Anna, that's been really amazing. Really great kind of intro into UX for Web3. Is there anything else, anything else you wanted to share?
So when your mom asks you, what is this Web3 thing? Just tell her it's all about digital ownership.
Nice.
That's it.
That's awesome.
And then say nothing else and then leave.
Drop the mic.
Just digital.
I love
Yeah,
it.
that's a good one.
Fantastic. And where should people find you?
LinkedIn.
Okay.
Reach out to me on LinkedIn, drop a little note in your connect, and let me know that you're from here and we can chat.
Fantastic. Yeah, I'm really excited to see what you work on next in the space. And
Excited to see what y'all build.